We'll call the board meeting to order. The first item of business is the public speakers. Hillary, do we have any?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there are 8 public speakers. Each speaker has 2 minutes to speak on agenda items. I'll call the first speaker, and I will also call who will be on deck so that you can make your way to the podium, which is over here. You have 30 seconds. You have 2 minutes to speak, and when there are 30 seconds left, a yellow light will appear on the podium. Please use this time to wrap up your remarks. At the end of 2 minutes, a red light will flash, and you'll hear a beep. Please conclude your remarks. Our first speaker today is John Samuelson, followed by Murray Bowden.
Hey, Hillary, I promise.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Loader.
Good morning.
Good morning, members of the board. Good morning, Norman. I'd be remiss not to, give you an individual good morning. That's right. We got to stick together. I'm here today to speak about the disposition of 370 J Street, which is the document that I was handed when I came walking in. Now, the entire scenario regarding 2 Broadway and 370 J Street involves fiscal decisions which have never made sense from the very beginning. The proposed final abandonment of 370 J Street, which for years was the New York City Transit Authority headquarters, deprives the MTA of an extremely valuable asset, 500,000 square feet of prime office space for which the authority pays nothing. Actually, they do pay something. They pay $1 a year in rent. Instead, the MTA is now paying a total of $63 million a year to stay at 2 Broadway, a building that they renovated for $845 million, but which they don't even own. Tens of millions of dollars in rider-generated funds are going to the owners of 2 Broadway every year, which is truly money thrown away. The Transport Workers Union wants to state unequivocally that we are not against the CUSP project. We believe that an innovative educational campus would be a great thing for Brooklyn. But put it somewhere other than 370 J Street. For instance, use the Brooklyn Navy Yard. 370 J Street was built for use in the transportation sector, houses the only tunnels which allow each of our 3 subway systems to intersect, and it contains a fully functional communication center and switches. It is perfect for the MTA. The reasons why the MTA wants to give up this asset to move into 2 Broadway and to continue to move into 2 Broadway are incomprehensible to the members of the Transport Workers Union, and when looked at closely should be equally puzzling to the members of this body. We are not alone in our opposition to the J Street giveaway. Assemblyman Peter Abadi has introduced a bill prohibiting the MTA from giving up a master lease unless it can be shown that there is a benefit to taxpayers in this transaction. Here, there is certainly no benefit to transit riders or taxpayers in the J Street giveaway. 2 Broadway is actually a windfall for a real estate mogul named Tamir Sapir, who bought the building originally for $20 million. Now the MTA pays $31 million a year in lease payments and $10 million more in financing costs and renovation costs. Sapir is now worth $700 million according to Forbes, off the backs of New York City Transit riders. There's something terribly wrong with this picture. For years, the MTA floated the idea that 370 J Street had to be abandoned because it was structurally unsound, that there was something wrong with the building. This week's press conference by the mayor and the head of NYU gave the lie to that claim. Clearly, 370 J Street is a valuable public asset, but why someone else should benefit from it remains a mystery to the men and women who service and maintain this transit system. $53 million was the total value of the service cuts enacted in 2010. $53 million. We're paying $63 million a year of transit riders' money to stay at 2 Broadway. Making the move into 370 J Street and back into 130 Livingston could restore every ounce of service that was cut in 2010. There's also been some discussion regarding the total cost of renovation at 370 J Street. Using the industry standard renovation costs, the cost would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $65 million. But even if it was double that, the MTA would recoup that money by moving back into 370 J Street in 2 years, based on the $63 million that they're kicking out to stay at 2 Broadway. In closing, let me say that before the MTA gets into the business of using its public assets that belong to New York City Transit riders to create an epicenter of technology in academia, the MTA should use that public asset to create an epicenter of excellent transit service in New York City. That's what transit riders deserve, and it's there for the taking. Every once in a while, a body such as this has to recognize that decisions that were made in the past were wrong and stand up and show leadership and reverse it. Thank you.
The next speaker is Murray Bowden, followed by Paul Piazza.
On Monday, I went to 4 committee meetings. What I saw there, I sent you an email. Each of you members of the board should have gotten a copy of the email I sent yesterday. Knowing that my time was limited, I put the background in that email. I can't compete with somebody's telephone. What went on at those meetings were members of this. These remarks really need to go to the governor so that, with no disrespect, I may be talking to the camera instead, because there's nothing that Joe or this board can do. Mr. Governor, what happened at Monday's committee meetings needs to be addressed by you. The members of this board, some of them have been here too long. They came here under other circumstances. This board now needs members who know how to run an organization. Some of these people that have been on a board for years and years and years are there for political purposes. The people that run this board now need to be people who know how to run a business and know how to run an organization. You've got an excellent chairman of the board here. The Port Authority has excellent people. New York State Thruway has excellent people. You have the opportunity now to replace a number of these board members with people who are in tune with today's economy. This is about jobs. This is about creating a transportation infrastructure to bring jobs to this area. The questions that were asked at these meetings this Monday should have been sent to the presidents of these various organizations by email, and if there needed to be a follow-up, that was fine. These board members were grandstanding. It was for their personal ego. Some of these board members think it's okay to park their SUV in front of this meeting because they're a board member, or to ignore a police officer because they're a board member. We don't need those kind of members on this board.
If you could finish up, Mr. Bowden.
So, Mr. Governor, you've done a good job in appointing people so far. It's time to replace a number of members of this board with people who can deal with the economy as it is today. I hope you take action soon. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to address the governor.
Our next speaker will be Paul Piazza, followed by Marty Goodman.
Good morning, Chairman Loda, board members. Hello again, another month. Just want to touch on the subject of money thrown away, or money misused, waste, you'd like to call it. When I first started this job as a station agent in 1983, we had a chief station officer, I believe it was Carol Meltzer, and an assistant chief station officer, Joe Burzo. Now, we have a chief station officer and 4 assistant chief station officers. As far as I know, the system hasn't gotten any bigger, but management is bloated. We have to stop this shell game. You're changing properties like a 3-card Monte player on Broadway. Let's get it back to where it should be. put it back at 370 J Street. It needs renovation. I know, I've been in the building. But it's the prudent thing to do. It's something that you can do and show the public once again that you are standing up for their interests, which I believe is the board's job. No more money wasted. No more money thrown away. The people of New York and TW Local 100 will not stand for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Piazza. The next speaker will be Marty Goodman, followed by John Denny. Mr. Goodman.
Hello, my name is Marty Goodman. I'm a station agent and Occupy Wall Street activist. I'd just like to comment on a few things. The move, your sale of J Street to NYU. You're paying rent there for $1 a year. The building could house the operations of the MTA like it used to. Now you're selling it to NYU, an elite school with an elite board, to do possibly military research. I don't know that, but I wouldn't discount it at all. It's outrageous. You're throwing money away while people are still laid off. 27 will be laid off still after the current round of rehires. But they're not the priority. Like Mr. Walters said the night before the 1,000 layoffs in 2010, I'll sleep like a baby. He called our president, John Samuelson, to tell him that. And it looks like the MTA has not changed its priorities. You're issuing $7 billion bond issue. Most of the income will be going towards paying tax-free income to the 1%. That's where all that money will ultimately be going, leaving us, the taxpayer, the working class rider, further in debt to the 1% on Wall Street. I say, use the money to pay transit workers. We will not accept a zero contract. We will not accept givebacks. Rehire the station agents now. No fare hikes. And I just want to say, look out for May 1st. We're going to be marching from Union Square down to 2 Broadway. Okay, I think you guys know where that is. There's going to be dozens of unions, dozens of community activist organizations, and hopefully thousands of Occupy Wall Street activists. We are coming to pay you a visit. You're going to remember that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is John Denny. John Denny, followed by Tony Murphy.
Good morning. My name is John Denny. I'm a member of the Labor Outreach Committee of Occupy Wall Street, but I'm speaking only for myself. In my opinion, it is outrageous that you still have station agents out on the street since May 2010, and now with no unemployment or health benefits. I consider equally outrageous the insulting contract offer you have made to the unions representing your workers and your continued failure to bargain in good faith. These reprehensible actions in which you continue to engage are even more egregious in view of your poor management of the funds necessary to run the agency you are charged with overseeing. I refer specifically to your allowing yourselves to be snookered by the Wall Street sharpsters in the matter of the interest rate swaps. The public should know that while Wall Street bankers profit handsomely due to their own actions in causing the current economic crisis and your incompetence, you want to cause even more suffering to the workers who take us where we need to go each and every day, and do a much better job from the MTA than any of you as you dissipate the money with which you have been entrusted. The letters on the plaque in front of this building should be changed from MTA to ATM, because that is what it has become, a giant ATM for the benefit of the criminals on Wall Street. I call upon you to seek a restructuring of your debt load. It is unconscionable to me that 17% off the top of my MetroCard swipe goes to the likes of Goldman Sachs and the other banksters who hold your bonds, while you continue to treat your workers with no shred of justice whatsoever. In the name of humanity, restructure your debt. Find the money to bring back the remaining laid-off station agents. Find the money to bargain a fair contract with your workers. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Denny. Our next speaker will be Tony Murphy, followed by Robert Cohen.
I'm here with the May 1st Coalition, and I'd like to ask the body that matters, the transit workers, what does MTA stand for? Money thrown away. What is that? Money thrown away. Public transportation is being dismantled by this body which only serves the 1%. Services for the disabled are being cut. Transit workers laid off. Station agents completely demolished. They're not there anymore. It's very sad, in fact, to see what's become of public transportation, which is supposed to serve the people. It's sad to see it. It's really on life support. It's on life support, but it's not dead. There is still a pulse in transportation, public transportation. There is still a heart. And that pulse, that heart, is the transit workers. TWU Local 100, who stood up for the protesters that occupy Wall Street, who are there every day if somebody falls on the tracks, who are there every day operating the system that still exists and should exist for the 99%. The transit workers stood out by opposing the use of city buses to arrest protesters that occupy Wall Street, and stood out a couple of weeks ago by organizing a demonstration for Trayvon Martin. And on May 1st, Tuesday, the transit workers will be marching for justice for the 99% with tens of thousands of people. And this is the only way to achieve justice, the only way to reclaim the public transportation system. You know, John Samuelson just mentioned to me, why give away this building, 370J, to NYU? Why not give it away to CUNY? Why not give it away to public education? But we can't expect this board, which serves the 1%, to do anything which benefits the 99%.
If you could conclude your remarks,
We need
Mr.
to
Murphy.
replace this board with what's called a people's MTA, with people who represent the 99%, people from the communities in New York City, from all the boroughs, who represent the disabled, the students, the transit workers. And we need to, that's the only way to reclaim public transportation. And the mess that this board, that is only capable of serving the 1%, has made of this great transportation system.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Our next speaker is Robert Cohn, followed by Neil Weissman.
Problems with paying by coin for the SBS and losing your reduced fare MetroCard. When you pay with coins for the SBS buses, you can't get a transfer for another SBS bus, a regular bus, or the subway. This requires regular and reduced fare passengers to pay double fares at regular rates. On subways, there's no one to help you even get with your receipt, and attendants aren't allowed to issue reduced fare cards. The SBS machines using cash, unlike the ones for cards, make it difficult to see if the receipt is there. Instead of coming straight out, it's curled inside a flap to lift up, and you have to poke to get it out. The machine is somewhat different from parking muni meters, on which they are modeled after. If you lose or misplace your reduced MetroCard, God help you. When you call to report the loss, the cancellation is not reversible, even if you find the card immediately. It takes 6 to 8 weeks to get a replacement card. During that time, even though you're entitled to pay only $1.10, you're penalized for almost 2 months to pay double what you should pay because of the above issues regarding transfers. It's worse in the subways. You need a better system that processes new cards within a week. New York State Motor Vehicle modernized their operations. It's time your Metro card to do the same. It's traumatic enough to lose your card, but it adds insult to injury to take 6 to 8 weeks to get a new one. When I have a damaged card and went down to Bowling Green, I got a card immediately. However, if you lose your Metro card, you can't even go down in person to get another one. I'm also submitting a written statement from my wife, Sana Cohen, about the problems with the SBS design, which makes it much harder for her to use in the older buses as a senior using a cane for back, hip, and leg issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Our last speaker will be Neil Weissman.
Good morning. My name is Neil Weissman. I'm speaking on behalf of the New York Cycle Club, one of the nation's oldest, largest cycling organizations. I personally lead about 50 group rides per year, and a vast majority of them require some sort of the regional rail lines, New Jersey Transit, Metro North, Long Island Railroad. I want to talk about the Sunday evening exclusion, the 5 to 8 p.m. A typical ride would be for me to take a dozen cyclists, train out to Ronkonkoma, head south to Medford, pick up the bicycle path, which is one of the oldest bicycle roads in America, head up to Port Jefferson, Belterre, Cedar Beach, Rocky Point, come back to Ronkonkoma, pick up the 540 back to New York City. A friend of mine emailed me and said, you're not supposed to be able to get on that train. And I go, who knew? I've been taking it for years, and no one's ever said anything. No conductor's ever mentioned it. If I were a mother with a set of twins and a large stroller, and I just spent the weekend with grandma, and I was getting on the train, no problem. If I had just done 18 rounds at Bethpage, and I was, after dinner and drinks, getting on the same train, no trouble. If I just spent the weekend backpacking and hunting at Rocky Point, getting on the same train with all of this equipment, no problem. But because I've got a bicycle, I've got an exclusion here. So this seems to be pretty unequitable, and there's no other regional rail that has this kind of a Sunday evening exclusion. And the second thing is you've got a bike per train, bike per car policy. The New Jersey Advisory Committee has just recommended to the board amending the 2 bike per car policy to whatever reasonable space. We could easily fit five bikes in what you now consider 2. This is the stuff I'd like to bring to your attention, saying this seems to be fairly inequitable and a waste of facilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weissman. That concludes the public speakers.
Thank you, Hillary. Good morning. I want to start with a brief remembrance of 3 people who gave their lives while working within the MTA system. Late last month, John Massis, a worker from the Bronx helping paint the Throgs Neck Bridge, fell from a platform to his death. He left behind his wife and 3 children. Earlier this month, a crane collapsed on the 7-line extension project, claiming the life of Michael Zimmermeyer, who came from a family of construction workers and whose father was working on the project at the same time. While the investigations into these deaths continue, the entire MTA family is saddened by their loss. Just this morning, a 47-year-old New York City Transit worker passed away after falling ill at his workplace. We still don't entirely know all the circumstances, and we're in the process of notifying his family. Again, the entire MTA family mourns his loss. I'd like to extend our deepest condolences to the families, and I ask that we observe a brief moment of silence in their memory. Before we move to our regular agenda, I'd like to brief you on the positive results we're seeing from the Fast Track program. This program, as you know, shuts down sections of the New York City Transit subway lines on 4 consecutive evenings for intensive maintenance and cleaning. Up to 800 employees on these projects work every night, and with no train service or passengers to work around, they accomplish far more and are doing it much more safely. The Fast Track program continues this week on the A, C, and E lines. This program has been, in my estimation, a home run for the MTA, and the stations that have been through the fast track program look better than they have looked in years. In the first quarter of this year, we've installed 152 rails. Our workers have cleaned 17 miles of track, removed more than 44 tons of debris, scraped 100,000 square feet of peeling paint, and painted 75,000 square feet of station, among the many accomplishments that they've done. New York City Transit will be reporting on the financial issues related to this program at a future Transit Committee meeting. That being said, the minutes of last month's meeting have been distributed to all the members. Are there any corrections, changes, or omissions?
I move that they be adopted.
Seconded. All in favor? Aye. The minutes are approved. Now I'm happy to turn the floor over to MTA Vice Chairman Andrew Saul, who also chairs our Finance Committee, for that committee's report. Andrew?
Thanks, Joe. There are two action items this month. The first action item is to approve the MTA 2011 Annual Investment Report and the MTA All-Agency Investment Guidelines pursuant to the Public Authorities Law, Section 2925. The second action item is to authorize a public hearing on proposed tariff changes that would implement a major cost savings proposal in relation to the MTA paratransit program. Under this proposal, special Metro cards would be provided to paratransit eligible customers, allowing these customers free passage on New York City transit subways and buses as an incentive for such customers to choose to use NYCT fixed route service for some trips instead of the more expensive paratransit service. The committee recommends these action items, and I move them.
Do we have a second? Seconded. Any questions, any comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
There are three competitive procurements in the total amount of $24.45 million. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Do we have a second? Seconded. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
There are no non-competitive procurements or ratifications. There are 8 real estate action items which are described on pages 36 to 54 in the board book and in the separate staff summary distributed for this meeting. The committee recommends these real estate items, and I move them.
I'll second it. Are there any questions or comments before we have a vote? Yes, Mr. Kay. Okay, so duly noted. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Capelli? Give microphone.
On the 370 J Street proposal, Your Honorable Chairman, the proposal that's before the board is something that has been discussed in concept for a long time, and quite frankly, also comes out of public hearings that this board has had over the years, of which I have tried to attend every one of and have sat through virtually every minute of. The public hearings in Brooklyn not only spoke to the service cuts, for which I constantly try to remind this board of, but also to the fact that we've had an empty building sitting on J Street for a long time, where the public was telling us loud and clear, use it, we'll lose it. Now, this board also had a situation where we have multiple buildings in which we occupy. We've been shrinking management and the workforce and getting smaller and having a need for real estate. And we asked the real estate division of the Finance Committee to come up with a plan to consolidate our operations. That plan includes getting rid of this building, a building that we own, okay, and selling it, and I believe that is a prudent course of business. The other building is a building down at 2 Broadway, which we have a 30-year lease on, a 40-year lease, okay? I think there's 30 or 40 years left, which would cause us considerable expense were we to break that lease. And I think that fact has been omitted from some of the discussions that I've read in the paper and some of the comments that have occurred today. And the third site in Brooklyn, which I had asked the committee to look at as a possible relocation, was rejected because of the enormous capital costs that would be involved in renovating it. Capital costs that I remind the members of this committee that would involve spending capital dollars for which we'd have to borrow and paying debt service on for the next 30 years. In light of the multiple objectives that we have here, I believe that this action is a prudent action, not only financially for this board to get to have the agency consolidate its operations, dispose of Madison Avenue, centralize our operations in a building that we're already committed to for the next 30 years, and turn back to the people of Brooklyn for a project that I believe is a very forward-looking project for the area and for the city of New York. In addition, the surrender terms of the project call for us, were we to ever give up the lease, to receive nothing in return. Under this arrangement, we get $50 million to be able to absorb the cost that we have in order to facilitate it, which puts us far ahead of the game from any discussions we've had over several years. I would ask each and every member of the committee to support this proposal, as I believe that it fulfills all of our fiduciary responsibilities. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Capelli. Are there any other comments before we have our vote?
Associate myself, Mr. Chairman, with Mr. Capelli's comments.
So noted. Anyone else? The question's on the table. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the Finance Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Soul. And now I'd like to, we'll receive the report on the Transit Committee from its chairman, Mr. Mark LeBeau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Transit Committee met on Monday. We have 7 procurement actions in total for a cost of $40.9 million. There is 1 non-competitive procurement for MTA New York City Transit in the amount of approximately $300,000. The committee recommends this procurement, and I move it.
Any questions or comments? Are there a second? Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
There are 3 competitive procurements, all for MTA capital construction, in the total amount of $39.6 million. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Seconded. Any questions or comments? There being none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
And there are 3 ratifications, 1 for MTA New York City Transit and 2 for MTA capital construction, in the total amount of approximately $1 million. The committee recommends these ratifications, and I move them.
We have a second? Second. Any questions or comments? There being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And this concludes the transit report.
Thank you. I chaired this month's meeting of the Bus Operations Committee. There are 2 procurement actions in the total amount of $27.9 million. There are no non-competitive procurements. There's 1 competitive procurement in the amount of $13.1 million. The committee recommends this procurement, and I move it. That was seconded. Are there any questions or comments? There being none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. There's 1 ratification in the amount of $14.7 million. The committee recommends this ratification, and I move it. Any questions or comments? There being none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. This concludes the Bus Operations Committee report, and now we'll receive the report from the Metro North Long Island Railroad Committee by Mitch Paley. Commissioner?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. The Metro North and Long Island Railroad Committee met this month and reports the following. There is 1 action item. This item is to approve execution of a supplemental agreement between the New York State Department of Transportation and Metro North Railroad in the amount of $5.68 million. This allocation will cover construction costs associated with the replacement of the Bridge Street Bridge located in New Hamburg, in the town of Poughkeepsie in Dutchess County, New York, and associated design costs. The committee recommends this action item, and I move it.
Item's been seconded. Any questions or comments? There being none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
There are 13 procurement actions totaling $54.6 million. Of that, there are 2 non-competitive procurements in the total amount of $1.2 million. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Motion's been seconded. Are there any questions or comments? There being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
There are 10 competitive procurements, 3 for Long Island Railroad, 1 for Metro North Railroad, and 6 for MTA Capital Construction Company. The total amount of $51.85 million. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Have a second? Seconded. Any questions or comments? There being none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
And there is 1 ratification for the MTA Capital Construction Company in the amount of $1.5 million. The committee recommends this ratification, and I move it.
Do we have a second? Second. Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And this concludes the report, sir.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the committee report from Bridges and Tunnels by its chairman, Mr. Alan Capelli.
Bridges and Tunnels met this month and report the following. There are no non-competitive procurements, but there are 7 competitive procurements in the total amount of $35.44 million. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Item's been seconded. Are there any questions or comments? There being none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
There are no ratifications, and this concludes the Bridges and Tunnels Committee report.
Thank you, Alan. This concludes the business of this meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Second? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you all. Good morning. No question? Okay, great. Thank you.
When are you going to stop throwing money away? Aren't there, in fact, uses that you could for that building at J Street, even if you had to renovate it? I mean, there are other buildings, like isn't the business service center in a building that's being rented? I mean, even if you can't break the lease for 2 Broadway, it couldn't there be something?
We're in the process of also my desire and overall goal is to move the business service center to 2 Broadway as well. I think there's a lot to be saved by having everyone together physically in one place. That's my ultimate goal. We'll be moving headquarters down there as well as the BSC, and then reducing our rent exposure as much as we possibly can. Any other
We
questions?
talk about the matter of, we've been in the media talking about crime on the subways, possibly talking about you meeting with the commissioner, talking to the police commissioner about that issue and trying to come up with a strategy to combat that. Anything specific happening today, first and foremost, and then could you address the issue overall? Thank you.
As reported on Tuesday's meeting, crime stats are down from March of 2011 to March of 2012. So I'm a little bit taken aback by the amount of reports that keep talking about crime increasing on the subways. I think the NYPD is doing a very good job in monitoring crime and continuing to reduce crime. It's beyond me where these reports in the press are coming from.
Well, I think the report is coming from the one instance of, I believe, larcenies are up 21%. Granted, other sections of crimes are down, but it seems alarming that just this one, stealing cell phones, stealing iPads.
Right.
That
It's down
seems to be
significantly from where it was 3 months ago. It continues to decline month to month. And the NYPD, through all of its strategies, is working. At the same point, we are advertising on the subways and buses for those people who are using smartphones and tablet devices to be very careful about how they use them. Those have become very specific targets, not just here in New York, but nationwide. This is a trend that's happening. We're encouraging all users to find the right app that will allow the phones and the tablets to be found if in fact they are stolen. But I have to credit the NYPD for seeing a reduction month over month over month in this problem, that unique problem that's being experienced nationwide.
At the end of last year, the NYPD went into subways and increased patrols because of the spike in these types of theft. It seems that the spike has gone back up in the past 4 months. Are there any plans for the NYPD to go back on?
My statistics don't show that at all.
Okay, I'll actually pull out the ones.
Just to follow up on that question, are you concerned, do you have any concerns about repeat offenders getting back on the trains, slap on the wrists when they get caught, coming back to the trains, committing the same crimes or going even further. Have you brought up that issue with the police commissioner and ways to combat that?
I brought this issue up with Chief Fox, head of the Transit Bureau. I've also talked to the district attorneys about it. I'm concerned about recidivism in all parts of the city, not just the subway system. It's not unique to the subway system at all.
Chairman, I actually just pulled up the statistics I got from the NYPD, particularly grand larceny. January through March of this year is up 23.6%. Robberies are up 31.8%. So those are the stats we're getting from the
Right,
NYPD.
and if you look at the January numbers, the February numbers, and the March numbers, they are declining month over month over month. What you're looking at are the aggregate numbers in toto. The statistics are actually showing that March is lower than February, February is lower than January. It's all going in the right direction.
But isn't it still saying something that in 4 months of 2012, there's been that 23% increase, whereas in all of 2011, it was 23% lower?
Which is why Commissioner Kelly, Chief Fox at the Transit Bureau late last year put together various strategies to deal with what we saw in the spike, specifically related to smartphones and tablets, which, as you know, when I get on the subway at night, it's amazing to me to see the number. Almost everybody on board, including myself, I'm returning my emails. I pull it out, I return them. I know they can't go out until I leave the system. But we take advantage of that time while we're on there to deal with that. With that, the bad guys have figured out that there's a secondary market for it. We're doing everything we can, as is the police department, in both the increase in the presence of the uniforms, as well as strategies in place, as well as advertising, telling our customers and our riders how important it is to protect their assets.
Are you also adding in there, don't fall asleep? I mean, apparently they are targeted when they are specifically napping or falling asleep, as people often do on the train.
We are not specifically telling people not to nap on the subway.
Chairman, so is there a meeting today between Police Commissioner Kelly and you, or even a conversation?
I have conversations with Ray Kelly frequently. Again, I'm as taken aback by the amount of press on this particular meeting today than I am on any other. It's just amazing. I've seen Ray. I saw Ray last week. I saw him 3 or 4 weeks before that. And this is, silly.
Chairman, can I just ask one more question? Monday, I actually have a little bit of a different spin on this. On Monday's Transit Committee meeting, I believe, there was something said about one of the board members concerned about 40 criminals who had previously been convicted for crimes on the subway. They're now on parole and possibly might be back on the subway. Can you clarify and expand on this quote that I saw?
I attended the meeting, and the conversation was just about, how can we enforce making sure that people who are not allowed on the subways get on the subways. Many times judges will put restraining orders to not allow them on there, and if they are found, they're taken off. We have on any given day on all of our transit systems, in Metro North, Long Island Railroad, the subway, and the buses, 8.5 million people. And in this case, if there are people who are not allowed on there, we're doing our very best to make sure that they're not there. And again, I credit the NYPD with that.
Chairman Loda, can I ask you about, just going back to the real estate again, how do you, when you look at the sale of 378 or 370J and the broader history of the MTA with the sale of these assets, it seems like the MTA is shifting to become more of a renter than, a tenant in the buildings that it actually owns. How do you feel what's going on with the real estate now fits into the kind of longer plan for real estate? I mean, it always seems to be better to own than rent, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
First off, we didn't own 370 J Street.
Sure.
That's owned by the City of New York. By the agreement, our master lease, when we don't use it, we are required to give it back to them.
Okay.
We did not do that to make sure that we did not need the space. Once we came to the conclusion that we didn't need the space, we gave it back to them. But in negotiations to make sure that we received the $50 million necessary to remove the critical telecommunications equipment that's in there.
But what about 347 Madison, where you're...
347 Madison,
Yep.
We currently own this building.
Correct.
We're in the process of leaving it to move down to 2 Broadway. Whether we sell it or we continue to own it, and it's a long-term lease, is a financial analysis that we're going through right now.
Okay.
When we make that decision, we will make it known through the committee structure. But the idea that we're going to sell this particular building is not necessarily the case. We may actually become a landlord and let other people move into this space.
Good morning, Chairman. The transfer of J Street frees up some money, I would assume. About how much? And could that be used for fixing up subway stations or restoration of service cuts?
J Street does not free up any money. We're receiving $50 million as part of an arrangement that's been made between the City of New York, NYU, and the MTA. That $50 million will be used to move the telecommunications equipment that's in there.
On Monday's meeting, there was a discussion about some restoration of service cuts. This is an issue that has come up before. They're trying to identify $21 million, I think was the figure from a couple months ago. Is there an effort underway and a serious look at bringing back some of the cuts?
Not a day goes by when we don't look at the service cuts that we had and try to determine if we were in a financial position to be able to put them back, how we would put them back, which ones would we put back, not necessarily the same ones that were cut. You know, the demographics of the city change daily, and so we have to determine when that time comes when we are in a financial position to make changes. We're ready to do it as quickly as possible.
Could we see another vote on that, as happened, I think it was in January, to identify some specific cuts and identify some area where the money would be coming from?
Anything's possible at a board meeting. I will not be putting forward that recommendation as a member of the board. Yes?
What, is it on? It's on. Okay. I mean, the real core of like the union's argument with the J Street thing is that the MTA shouldn't have moved from a building that costs $1 a year into a place where they're going to have to pay $60 million, rent. I mean, what can you say about that, like to counter that it should never have been moved out in the first? I know it costs a lot to renovate it, and you've moved. I mean, do you think that the
Jen,
MTA
I have
should
to do an analysis to determine the decisions that were made 12 years ago. I have to be involved with the presidents of each one of the operating divisions to help run the MTA on a daily basis. I haven't had the time to look at this level of history, so I really can't properly answer that.
How have negotiations been going with GW that was out of contract for a few months?
You missed my hug of John before, and we saw each other. We meet frequently. We continue to meet. We are having another meeting tomorrow, which I'll probably read about again and again and again, though we've met over and over and over again. Anything else?
Will Governor Patterson's possible nomination and appointment on the board change the dynamic?
Well, I think every time a member of the board is appointed, it changes the dynamic, and I think Governor Patterson will, like he's always been in everything that he's done, be active and involved, and look forward to his perspective, and especially, and I'm looking forward to his help in Albany.
Chairman, I don't mean to belabor the point. Just one more point of clarification. I think I missed maybe your answer to this. Will there be increased patrols at all with the NYPD just because of? I guess I missed what you said about that. Last year, I know that increased patrols were put in place because of these thefts of iPods. Will there be something similar? Is that something you'll talk about with Commissioner Collins?
It's not on my list of things to talk about with the commissioner today, but out of respect to you, I will. In addition to that, in answer to the question, I will find out about the level of patrols. I believe Chief Fox talked about that at the meeting on Monday, and specifically, I can't remember exactly what he said about the level of patrols. But we have seen a significant increase of uniforms, as well as patrolmen and officers out of uniforms within the system, and we're very appreciative. Thank you.
Can you just expand on, you just said looking forward to Patterson's, I don't know if you used the word influence in Albany, but something about Patterson's connection to Albany. Can you just talk about how important it would be, Governor Patterson?
It was help.
Help in Albany. Sorry. Okay, help in Albany. Can you just expand upon that?
David for many years was a state senator from New York County. And so much so that his conference named him the leader. His expertise in the legislature, I think, will be absolutely wonderful. His experience as governor is something else that I would look forward to working with him on, and allowing us to have better understanding of how Albany operates. I'm absolutely looking forward to David Patterson being on the board. I've known David for quite some time, and I think he will change the dynamic. No one is as smart on certain subjects as David, and I'm looking forward to having David involved.